What's going on, guys? This is Ryan with the RK Outpost, and once again, people are mad at Dave Chappelle over his Netflix special, The Closer, because they think that his words cause real-world violence. And this time, Dave Chappelle is actually going to speak to his haters, to speak to his critics, to let them get something off their chests before he shows them how truly pathetic they are. And we already heard the first part of this story. Dave Chappelle's high school postpones renaming ceremony following heated student debate, when they were going to name a theater after Dave Chappelle, a theater for Duke Ellington School of the Arts, of which he has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for and gotten a ton of attention for them. And a few students, a vast minority of students, got really upset about this, that it just wasn't right that they were naming it after Dave Chappelle. So they decided to push it off. They weren't going to cancel it, but they were going to allow students to speak their mind. Well, as it turns out, they got to speak their mind directly to Dave Chappelle. Politico Playbook, a Dave Chappelle Thanksgiving special. Dave Chappelle made a surprise stop by DC's Duke Ellington School of the Arts on Tuesday in the latest chapter of the running saga with his alma mater. A not-so-welcome homecoming, Dave Chappelle. And I don't know, based on how they describe it, it actually sounds like it was pretty welcoming. When you hear even the slanted coverage can't really change that the vast majority of people were glad to see Dave Chappelle there. A not-so-welcome homecoming. Dave Chappelle made a surprise stop by DC's Duke Ellington School of the Arts on Tuesday in the latest chapter of the running saga with his alma mater. But if the self-proclaimed GOAT hoped to smooth things over amid the backlash over his jokes about transgender people, he was in for a surprise of his own. Some 580 students packed into an auditorium to hear the school's most famous alumnus discuss the uproar triggered by his Netflix special, The Closer. And let's just be very honest about this. The only people that are really upset about this are a fringe minority of freaks and weirdos, the 12 people that actually walked out of Netflix, the couple dozen protesters that were actually there, and it sounds like maybe a few of these students in high school. These are the only people that are actually making any noise. Other than that, it's just like fake Twitter nonsense drama. The vast majority of people had no problem with what Dave Chappelle said. They laughed at what Dave Chappelle said because, again, it is a stand-up routine, and they support Dave Chappelle's right to say it. But it's a big controversy because a couple of these losers have made a lot of noise. With the camera crew in tow, Chappelle took the stage to a raucous reception of cheers and some booze. And the hour-long session went south from there, we're told. During a Q&A session, and they go through a lot of this stuff. There's some good lines from here. There's some interesting stuff. Some things I don't know if I would want someone saying to my kid in a high school auditorium, but we're gonna talk about it. During a Q&A session, one student stepped to the mic and called Chappelle a bigot, adding, "I'm 16 and I think you're childish. You handled it like a child," according to two students present. The comments were confirmed by Chappelle's spokesperson, Carla Sims. No apologies. Dave Chappelle responded, as recalled the next day by the students. "My friend, with all due respect, I don't believe you could have made one of the decisions I have to make on a given day." That peeved some students who were hoping for an apology or some semblance of one from Chappelle. That tells you they have no idea what they're doing. He's talking to high school students. He is talking to privileged, spoiled students, and the ones that have a problem with what he's saying are the incredibly far left woke ones. That's what's going on. As they describe later in this article, the majority of students there didn't even speak because it was only the ones that had a problem with Chappelle that were supposed to say something. The rest just sat there in silent support while these few made fools of themselves. These kids are so mentally weak. They could not survive a Modern Warfare 2 lobby, as Jeremy Griggs would like to say. They think that Twitter is real life. This is the world that they are living in, the ones that have a problem with this. So no, Dave Chappelle's not going to apologize. In response to another antagonistic question, Chappelle roughly told the student body of artists, "I'm better than every instrumentalist artist, no matter what art you do at this school right now. I'm better than all of you. I'm sure that will change. I'm sure you'll be household names soon." The student recalled that another student in the audience shouted at him, "Your comedy kills." Please. And Chappelle shot back, "N-words are killed every day." He then asked, "The media's not here, right?" So some people probably had a problem with that if their parents are there. One disturbed parent. The two students we spoke to declined to go on the record out of fear of retribution from the school. Okay. The father of one of his students, who also declined to speak publicly to protect the identity of his daughter, said, as a parent, I have to say I have a real problem. He was being dead serious and used the N-word on record. What kind of judgment is the school showing to allow that? And I can see where they're coming from, especially it's like, hey, Dave Chappelle's here to talk to the audience, and your 14-year-old kid goes in there. I can see some parents having a problem with that being used. I really can. So I don't really have too much to say about that one, other than he's too much of a bitch to go on record. Sims, the Chappelle spokesperson, responded, they are complaining that he talked and said the N-word. If anything, Dave is putting the school on the map. Chappelle has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Duke Ellington and brought A-list celebrities such as Bradley Cooper and Chris Tucker to its campus. The two students who spoke to Playbook said they were afraid to speak up at the assembly because Chappelle often laughed at students' questions or responded with jokes. Heaven forbid a comedian respond with jokes. Heaven forbid when some woke loser 16-year-old comes up and asks you a question or calls you a bigot that you laugh at it because it's just that ridiculous. Shut the fuck up. At one point, after a student left the assembly room, Chappelle singled her out by saying, of course she left early. Who do they think they're dealing with right now? You're dealing with a stand-up comedian. Holy fuck. Sims said that the person couldn't even entertain the idea of a conversation. Some students were equally put off by Chappelle. He could tell we were nervous, said one of the students. Oh my. It was a huge power imbalance of this grown man and his camera crew and these 14 to 18-year-olds without their phones, just high school kids. Students had to lock their phones in special pouches beforehand to prevent recordings. That's actually something that's super common at comedy shows or anything like that. And since Dave Chappelle filmed this, I assume he's going to use it for something. So I guess that does make sense. A spokesperson for the school said about 8 students came forward to ask questions. So out of the 580 people, 580, all of you, hey, address your concerns. Come on, if you have a problem with Dave Chappelle, 8 people spoke. I don't even know how big this school is. 580 people in the auditorium. Usually there's way more than that actually enrolled in a school. 8 people. That's what this is all about. This entire controversy is about 8 woke high school students. That tells you something, doesn't it? The media continues to try to portray it as something that it absolutely is not. It is a fringe minority of these groups that are actually trying to make noise about this and actually trying to get Dave Chappelle canceled. During the conversation with students and staff, Chappelle specifically invited the voices of discontent to ask questions. However, as a result, the supporters of Chappelle became the silent majority. Our principal was approached by several students after who were disappointed they weren't able to voice their support for Chappelle in the forum. And here it goes a little bit more to what Dave Chappelle was aiming for in this entire thing. No hard feelings. According to students, Chappelle seemed to soften up as he wound down. Turning to the camera, he spoke out against the death threats some students have been receiving. The school has responded by increasing security and barring students from leaving the campus. His whole tone changed. He said, this is my family, and whether they know it or not, I love these kids. I don't want to hear about any threats to these kids. These kids don't deserve that. And I am very skeptical of any actual threats, to be honest with you. He was really kind, the student added. If only he'd acted that way the whole time. There was no reason to be mean to us. He was just laughing at kids. Yeah, because these kids think that they know enough to say that Dave Chappelle should be canceled. That's why he was laughing at these idiots. A parting gift. Simshit said Chappelle was expecting forgiveness, not to offer an apology of his own. The school postponed an event to name its theater after him amid concerns about the student reaction. He says these kids deserve an F for forgiveness, but give them space to grow. They're gonna say things that are immature. On his way out, Chappelle gave 3 tickets to each of the students for the screening of his documentary Untitled at Capital One Arena that night and 600 Thanksgiving meals for students and staff. Well, there you go. Dave Chappelle telling these kids who tried to protest him, who tried to make this theater that's supposed to be named after him, try to get that canceled. He goes and talks to them, makes fun of them a little bit for being idiots, for being losers, but at the same time says, like, I still love you guys. I still care about you guys. Here, have free this. Here, have free that. And I hope eventually you come to the realization that Twitter is not real life, that this little weird echo chamber you live in is not the real life. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. Dave Chappelle continuing to not apologize for anything. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.